You think you know betrayal? You think you understand what happens when years of loyalty get thrown out the window like yesterday's garbage? Well, buckle up because what went down backstage between Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman makes every other wrestling betrayal look like a friendly handshake. The Beast incarnate didn't just confront his former advocate, he unleashed 15 years of pent-up rage in a backstage encounter so intense that WWE officials are still trying to figure out how to handle the fallout. Multiple sources inside WWE have confirmed what many thought was impossible. Brock Lesnar, the man who rarely shows emotion beyond calculated violence, was seen in an absolute fury after discovering something so shocking about Paul Heyman that it shattered their legendary partnership forever. We're talking about a confrontation so explosive that security had to intervene, and the aftershocks are still rippling through every championship storyline in WWE. But here's the kicker that's going to blow your mind: this wasn't about Roman Reigns, this wasn't about championship gold, and this definitely wasn't scripted drama for the cameras. What Brock discovered about Heyman's behind-the-scenes dealings makes every previous betrayal in wrestling history look like child's play, and when you hear the full story, you'll understand why even Triple H himself had to get involved in damage control. The tension had been building for months, but nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this coming. Paul Heyman, the wise man, the special counsel, the man who built his entire career on loyalty and strategic thinking, made one critical mistake that turned Brock Lesnar from an ally into the most dangerous enemy he's ever faced. And when the Beast confronted him about it backstage, witnesses say it was like watching a volcano erupt in slow motion. Let me paint you the picture of what actually went down, because this story has more twists than a steel cage match and more betrayal than a Royal Rumble elimination. It all started 3 weeks ago when Brock returned to WWE after his latest hiatus, expecting his usual red carpet treatment and immediate championship consideration. But instead of the hero's welcome he anticipated, Lesnar walked into a political minefield that Paul Heyman had been secretly constructing for months. Here's where it gets absolutely insane, and this is the part that has wrestling Twitter exploding with conspiracy theories. While Brock was away from WWE, focusing on his farm and his family, Heyman wasn't just managing Roman Reigns, he was actively working behind the scenes to ensure that Lesnar would never again receive the preferential treatment that made him the Beast incarnate. We're talking about systematic sabotage disguised as loyalty. Question for the comments: do you think Paul Heyman's actions were justified given Brock's history of part-time appearances, or did he cross a line that should never be crossed in professional wrestling? The backstage sources paint a picture of Heyman spending months in meetings with WWE executives, convincing them that Brock Lesnar's part-time schedule was hurting the product and that younger, hungrier talent deserved the opportunities that Lesnar had been monopolizing for over a decade. But here's the truly diabolical part: Heyman was doing this while texting Brock regularly, maintaining their friendship, and giving him false assurances about his position in the company. When Brock finally returned and requested his usual championship match at the next Premium Live event, he was told that storyline directions had changed and that he'd need to work his way back up through the midcard. For a man who's headlined WrestleMania multiple times and conquered The Undertaker's streak, being told to start over in the midcard was like telling a shark to swim in a kiddie pool. But the real bombshell came when Brock discovered the paper trail of Heyman's betrayal. Multiple wrestling journalists have confirmed that Lesnar was shown internal WWE documents proving that his so-called advocate had been actively campaigning against him for months. We're talking about detailed reports where Heyman questioned Brock's commitment, suggested alternative champions for major storylines, and even proposed storylines that would write Lesnar out of WWE programming entirely. The confrontation itself was described by witnesses as unlike anything they'd ever seen in professional wrestling. Brock Lesnar, normally a man of few words who lets his actions speak volumes, reportedly spent over 20 minutes absolutely unleashing on Paul Heyman in a backstage corridor. Security cameras caught every moment, and while WWE hasn't released the footage, multiple sources describe it as the most intense real-life confrontation in wrestling history. Here's what makes this story even more explosive: this wasn't a kayfabe argument that got out of hand, this was real-life animosity between two men who built careers together and created some of the most memorable moments in WWE history. When Brock discovered that Heyman had been secretly undermining him while pretending to be his friend, it triggered a level of rage that scared even the most experienced WWE veterans. The specifics of what Brock said to Heyman are still being debated, but multiple sources confirm that the Beast didn't just question Heyman's loyalty, he systematically destroyed every justification Heyman tried to offer for his actions. Witnesses describe Brock as methodical in his anger, breaking down Heyman's arguments point by point while backing him into a literal corner. Question for the comments: if you were in Brock Lesnar's position and discovered this level of betrayal from someone you trusted, how would you have handled the confrontation? But the story gets even wilder when you consider Paul Heyman's response to being confronted with evidence of his betrayal. Instead of apologizing or trying to explain his actions, sources say Heyman doubled down and tried to justify his backstage politicking as being best for business. He reportedly told Brock that part-time performers were hurting WWE's ability to build consistent storylines and that his actions were motivated by concern for the company's future. This defense only made Brock angrier, because it revealed that Heyman's betrayal wasn't impulsive or emotional, it was calculated and strategic. The man who built his reputation on loyalty had been systematically dismantling his most famous client's career while maintaining the facade of friendship and professional support. The wrestling world is still trying to process the implications of this confrontation, because it affects way more than just Brock and Heyman's relationship. We're talking about a complete reshuffling of WWE's power structure, with Heyman's credibility as the wise man potentially shattered and Brock's future in the company hanging in the balance. Multiple WWE superstars have reportedly reached out to both men trying to mediate the situation, but according to backstage sources, Brock has made it clear that there's no coming back from this level of betrayal. He's not interested in apologies, explanations, or attempts at reconciliation. He wants Paul Heyman completely removed from his professional circle. The ripple effects are already being felt throughout WWE's creative department, with several planned storylines being scrapped or rewritten to account for the legitimate heat between Brock and Heyman. Writers are reportedly struggling to find ways to keep both men on television without creating additional real-life drama that could spiral out of control. Here's where the story takes another shocking turn that nobody saw coming. While most people assumed this confrontation would result in Brock demanding Heyman's firing or at least his removal from any storylines involving the Beast incarnate, Lesnar reportedly took a completely different approach that has WWE management scratching their heads. Instead of trying to get Heyman fired or punished, Brock apparently told WWE officials that he wants to handle this situation his way, in the ring, with no corporate interference or backstage politics influencing the outcome. We're talking about Brock Lesnar essentially challenging Paul Heyman to face the consequences of his actions in the most public and brutal way possible. Question for the comments: do you think WWE should allow this real-life conflict to play out on television, or should they try to resolve it backstage to prevent any genuine animosity from affecting the product? The challenge Brock issued isn't just about getting revenge on Heyman personally, it's about sending a message to every other manager, agent, and backstage politician in WWE that betraying the Beast incarnate comes with serious consequences. Sources say Lesnar wants to make an example of Heyman that will discourage anyone else from attempting similar backstage manipulations. But here's the truly diabolical aspect of Brock's proposed revenge plan. Instead of demanding a traditional wrestling match where Heyman would be completely outmatched, Lesnar reportedly wants to destroy Paul Heyman's reputation and credibility in the most public way possible. We're talking about a systematic dismantling of everything that makes Heyman valuable to WWE. The plan, according to multiple sources, involves Brock exposing Heyman's betrayal on live television, complete with documentation and evidence of his backstage politicking. This wouldn't just be wrestling storyline drama, this would be Brock Lesnar presenting a case that could potentially end Paul Heyman's career in WWE management and talent relations. WWE executives are reportedly divided on how to handle this situation, because allowing it to play out publicly could create precedents for other real-life conflicts spilling onto television. But refusing to let Brock handle it his way could result in losing one of their biggest draws permanently, especially if he decides to take his frustrations public through social media or interviews. The psychological warfare between these two men has already begun, with subtle references and coded messages being inserted into their respective television appearances. Heyman's recent promos with Roman Reigns have included what wrestling analysts believe are veiled references to loyalty and commitment, while Brock's limited television time has featured him looking noticeably more intense and focused than usual. Behind the scenes, other WWE superstars are reportedly choosing sides in this conflict, creating factions and alliances that could affect storylines for months to come. Some veterans are supporting Heyman's position that part-time performers receive too much preferential treatment, while others are backing Brock's stance that loyalty and friendship should trump backstage politics. Question for the comments: which current WWE superstar do you think would be most likely to publicly support Brock Lesnar in this conflict, and who would side with Paul Heyman? The financial implications of this conflict are staggering when you consider how much revenue both men generate for WWE. Brock Lesnar remains one of the company's biggest pay-per-view draws, while Paul Heyman's management and creative contributions affect multiple storylines and championships. Losing either man could impact WWE's bottom line significantly. Corporate sponsors and television executives are reportedly monitoring this situation closely, because real-life conflicts between major WWE personalities can affect the company's public image and marketability. The last thing WWE needs is a high-profile legal battle or public relations nightmare resulting from this backstage drama. The international wrestling community is watching this story develop with fascination, because it represents something rarely seen in modern sports entertainment: genuine emotion and real consequences in an industry built on predetermined outcomes and scripted conflicts. This isn't kayfabe that got too real, this is reality that's more dramatic than any storyline WWE's creative team could imagine. Wrestling historians are already comparing this situation to legendary backstage conflicts from wrestling's past, but most agree that the Lesnar-Heyman situation is unique because of the men's long history together and the calculated nature of Heyman's betrayal. This isn't a heat-of-the-moment argument that spiraled out of control, this is systematic betrayal discovered and confronted. The psychological profiles of both men make this conflict even more compelling. Brock Lesnar built his entire persona around being an unstoppable force who respects loyalty and punishes betrayal, while Paul Heyman's character is built on being the ultimate strategist who always has a plan. When these two archetypes collide over real issues, the result is pure drama gold. Social media reaction to news of this confrontation has been explosive, with wrestling fans taking sides and creating hashtags supporting either Lesnar or Heyman. The debate has spread beyond wrestling circles into mainstream sports discussions, with analysts comparing it to real-life conflicts in traditional sports. Question for the comments: do you think this real-life conflict will ultimately help or hurt both men's careers in the long run, and how do you predict it will be resolved? The technical aspects of how WWE handles this situation from a creative standpoint are fascinating, because incorporating real animosity into scripted programming requires incredibly careful planning and execution. Writers have to balance authentic emotion with entertainment value while ensuring that nobody gets legitimately hurt or says something that could create legal issues. Multiple WWE producers and directors have reportedly requested additional security and oversight for any segments involving both Brock and Heyman, because the intensity of their real-life conflict could easily spill over into unplanned confrontations that disrupt live television broadcasts. The timing of this confrontation couldn't be more dramatic, coming just months before WrestleMania season when WWE typically builds its biggest storylines and most marketable matches. Having two of their most valuable performers in legitimate conflict creates both opportunities and risks for the company's most important revenue period. Backstage morale has reportedly been affected by this situation, with some WWE employees choosing to avoid interactions with either Brock or Heyman to prevent getting caught in the crossfire of their conflict. The professional atmosphere in WWE has become noticeably more tense since news of the confrontation spread throughout the company. The legal implications of this situation are also significant, because both men have complex contracts with WWE that include exclusivity clauses and behavioral standards. If this conflict escalates further, it could result in contract disputes or legal action that affects both men's ability to work in professional wrestling. International wrestling promotions are reportedly monitoring this situation closely, because any fallout that results in either Brock or Heyman leaving WWE could create opportunities for competitor companies to sign major talent with established drawing power and creative expertise. The merchandising implications are already being felt, with WWE reportedly pulling some collaborative Lesnar-Heyman merchandise from production while they evaluate how this conflict affects their marketability as a partnership. T-shirts, posters, and other items featuring both men together are now potential liability rather than revenue opportunities. Question for the comments: if this conflict results in one of them leaving WWE, which other wrestling promotion do you think would benefit most from signing either Brock Lesnar or Paul Heyman? The psychology of betrayal in professional wrestling takes on unique dimensions because the industry blends real relationships with scripted conflicts. When genuine betrayal occurs in a business built on fake betrayals, it creates emotional complexity that goes beyond typical workplace disagreements. Wrestling analysts are debating whether this conflict represents a fundamental shift in how WWE handles real-life disputes between major performers, or if it's an isolated incident that will be resolved through traditional backstage negotiations and financial considerations. The impact on other WWE storylines has been immediate and significant, with several planned angles being modified or scrapped entirely to avoid any connection to the Lesnar-Heyman conflict. Writers are reportedly working overtime to develop alternative storylines that don't rely on their established partnership. Fan reaction surveys conducted by WWE show that audience interest in this real-life conflict is actually higher than interest in many scripted storylines, suggesting that incorporating authentic emotion into wrestling programming could be a valuable creative direction if handled properly. The mentorship aspect of the Lesnar-Heyman relationship makes this betrayal particularly painful, because Heyman played a significant role in helping Brock navigate WWE politics during his early career. Having that trusted advisor turn against him represents a fundamental violation of their professional and personal bond. Corporate analysts following WWE stock prices have noted unusual volatility since news of this conflict became public, suggesting that investor confidence in WWE's ability to manage major talent could be affected by how this situation is ultimately resolved. The precedent this conflict sets for future WWE backstage disputes is significant, because it demonstrates that even long-standing partnerships and friendships are vulnerable to the political pressures and business considerations that drive sports entertainment decisions. Question for the comments: what do you think WWE management should prioritize more, maintaining good relationships with part-time performers like Brock, or developing full-time talent who can carry storylines consistently? The international media attention this story has generated extends far beyond wrestling publications, with mainstream sports outlets covering it as an example of how real-life conflicts can emerge from scripted entertainment industries. This crossover coverage increases both the opportunity and risk for WWE. Security protocols at WWE events have reportedly been enhanced specifically to manage potential confrontations between Brock and Heyman, with additional personnel assigned to monitor their interactions and prevent any unplanned incidents during live broadcasts. The creative opportunities this conflict presents are as significant as the challenges, because authentic emotion and genuine stakes could elevate wrestling storylines beyond their typical entertainment value into compelling human drama that transcends the usual boundaries of sports entertainment. The resolution of this conflict will likely set the tone for how WWE handles similar situations in the future, making it one of the most important backstage disputes in recent wrestling history from both creative and business perspectives. Whatever happens next, the wrestling world will be watching every development with intense interest. The Beast Incarnate and the Wise Man built one of wrestling's most successful partnerships, but their backstage confrontation proves that in the world of sports entertainment, even the strongest alliances can crumble when trust is broken. The question now isn't whether their relationship can be repaired, it's how far Brock Lesnar will go to get his revenge, and whether Paul Heyman can survive the consequences of betraying the most dangerous man in WWE. If you thought tonight's story was wild, trust me, what happens next will blow your mind. So don't stop now. Click on the video right here on your screen to continue the chaos, the drama, and the inside scoop only we deliver. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and join the wrestling newsletter family where the real stories of WWE come to life. See you in the next one.